Today, we're diving into a really shocking story coming out of the highest levels of the Chinese military. This is all based on some fascinating analysis from the commentator Zheng Jing Lu Shizhong. And believe me, it's a wild tale of power, betrayal, and a mystery that has shaken the People's Liberation Army right to its core.
So let's just jump right in. In late January, word gets out that He Weidong, who is the vice chairman of China's Central Military Commission, we're talking one of the most powerful military positions on the planet, has taken his own life. And get this, it supposedly happened just one day after his biggest rival, Zhang Yushaya, was officially purged. So that leaves us with two massive questions, right? Why would a general this high up choose such a final, desperate act? And how? How, under what must have been incredibly tight security, could he have possibly done it? To even begin to understand how something like this could happen, we actually have to look back at the history books, because it turns out this kind of thing, this kind of desperate act at the very top of Chinese power, well, it's happened before. Yeah, the source we're looking at points out that this is not the first time a top leader has chosen this path after feeling totally betrayed by the main man in charge. Just look at Gao Gang. He was a central government vice chairman, one of Mao's favorites even. But when he got purged in a power struggle he thought Mao wanted him to fight, he felt so completely wrong that he took his own life. Same thing with Luo Ruiqing, who was basically the military's second-in-command. When Mao turned on him, he tried to do the same. So there's a pattern here, a deep personal feeling of being completely hung out to dry by the one person at the very top.
Okay, so who was He Weidong anyway? His crazy, almost unbelievable rise to power is absolutely central to this entire mystery. You really can't understand his fall if you don't first get just how fast and how strange his ascent was.
So just look at this timeline. It's wild. For decades, He Weidong's career is fine. Steady, but nothing to write home about. Then, boom, 2022 happens. In March, he gets a big central job. But then just a few months later, in October, he just blows past all the normal rules. He leapfrogs more senior guys to become the number 2 in the entire military. To put this in perspective for you, he wasn't even on the Central Committee, which is like rule number 1 for getting a job that big. This kind of jump just doesn't happen. It was totally unprecedented.
So you have to ask, why? Why this sudden, shocking promotion out of nowhere? Well, according to the source, this incredible jump wasn't because he was some kind of superstar or Xi Jinping's secret favorite. Nope, it was the result of some serious backroom horse trading. He was the guy they picked when two much more powerful factions couldn't agree on who should get the top job. He was, put simply, a compromise.
And to really get that deadlock, we need to peel back the curtain and look at the two groups that were fighting for control of China's military. And this wasn't just some friendly competition about policy, this was a raw, bare-knuckle power struggle between two very distinct cliques. So on one side, you have Zhang Youxia's Vietnam War faction. These guys are old-school, hardened veterans with their power base in China's northern commands. And here's the key. Their leader, Zhang Youxia, had a direct personal line to Xi Jinping. They were childhood friends, princelings. Then on the other side, you've got the 31st Army faction. Their power is in the south and east, with a big focus on Taiwan. Their guys on the front line were Miao Hua and our guy, He Weidong. But their connection to Xi? It was totally indirect. They had to count on powerful retired generals to go and plead their case. Alright, so here's the play-by-play. Zhang Yuxia and the top guy from the 31st faction, Miao Hua, apparently hated each other. They blocked every move the other one made, and it created this total gridlock. So that's when the old-timers from the 31st Army faction got to work. The story goes they lobbied Xi 7 separate times. They knew they couldn't get their number 1 guy, Miao Hua, into the vice chairman job, so they pushed their number 2, He Weidong. And, well, it worked. He became the compromise that broke the stalemate.
So just like that, he gets the title. But according to this analysis, he had none of the real foundations of power you need to survive at that level. And that weakness, well, it would turn out to be fatal. He was sitting in one of the most powerful chairs in the country, but he was standing on a trapdoor.
The source really breaks it down into 4 critical weaknesses. First, his connection to Xi was weak and indirect. He always needed someone else to talk for him. Second, he'd never played in the big leagues before. He just didn't know the political games you have to play in Beijing. Third, and this is a huge one, he didn't have his own team, no network of loyalists in the Central Command. He was basically an outsider. And finally, he was a combat guy his whole life, and suddenly he's put in charge of political work. It's a totally different universe. In short, he was a lame duck vice chairman from the second he got the job.
And this is where all that vulnerability comes to a boiling point. He Weidong is handed this massive, high-stakes assignment. to lead a gigantic corruption investigation that was already sending shockwaves through the entire military.
His mission, should he choose to accept it, was to clean up the PLA rocket force. And he must have seen this as his golden ticket, right? This was his big chance to finally prove his loyalty to Xi by cracking the biggest corruption case in years. Plus, he could take a shot at his rivals in the Zhang Gujiakia faction, who were all tangled up in it. So he went for it, hard. But then, the whole thing just blew up in his face. The investigation took a shocking turn. The evidence he was digging up, the stuff that was supposed to bury his rivals, started pointing in a new and absolutely terrifying direction, right back at his own allies in the 31st Army faction. In a heartbeat, the hunter had become the hunted.
And here's the tragic irony. The source argues that He Whiting was really only on the edges of the corruption they found. The main player, the analysis suggests, was actually his own factional ally, Miao Hua. But in the brutal, cold logic of this power struggle, none of that mattered. He Whiting was the guy in the vice chairman's seat, so he was the one who was going to take the fall. He felt like he was being set up, made the scapegoat for everyone else.
So that feeling, that profound sense of injustice, of being made the scapegoat, that gives us the why. It's an echo of those historical cases we talked about at the beginning. But that still leaves us with that other massive question. How? How did he do it?
And this is where the last, crucial pieces of the puzzle just click into place. First, you have his detention conditions. Because he was such a high-ranking Politburo member, he wasn't locked away in some padded, high-security cell. He was being held in a military compound where security was just less intense. But second, and this is maybe the most important part, were his personal skills. See, He Weidong wasn't some desk jockey his whole life. He started his career as an elite reconnaissance soldier. He was literally trained in observation, planning, and pulling off complex technical tasks under the most extreme pressure imaginable. He had a very particular set of skills that your average bureaucrat just wouldn't have.
So in the end, this story, as the source lays it out, it's not just about one man's tragic end. It's a terrifying window into the brutal, high-stakes instability simmering right at the heart of elite Chinese politics. It shows you a system where these factional wars can rocket a man to the top overnight and then, just as fast, demand his total destruction. It leaves us with this tragic mystery and a really chilling question. What does one general's story tell us about the real stability of one of the most powerful regimes on Earth?